In the legal system, time operates as a physical force. Every second that ticks by slowly grinds down the pathways a citizen can take to demand justice, until eventually those pathways are erased completely. This friction is governed by a single operating principle: vigilantibus non dormientibus jura subvenient. The law assists those who are vigilant, not those who sleep on their rights. This diagram illustrates the central paradox of the Limitation Act of 1963, which splits every legal claim into two parallel tracks. If someone owes you money, you possess a substantive right to be paid. To force them to pay, you use a judicial remedy, the power of the courts. But that judicial remedy has an expiration date. In a standard contract dispute, the state gives you exactly 3 years to file a suit. Hit that deadline, and the state completely withdraws its enforcement apparatus. The debt itself still exists in the real world. The Limitation Act does not cancel the underlying obligation. It simply means the civil courts will act as if you do not exist. This withdrawal of state power is executed through Section 3. It serves as the absolute jurisdictional bar upon which the entire Limitation Act rests. The statute leaves no room for interpretation. It mandates that every suit instituted after the prescribed period shall be dismissed, even if limitation has not been set up as a defense. If a plaintiff files a lawsuit a day late and the defendant's lawyer completely forgets to point out the missed deadline, the judge is legally obligated to throw the case out anyway. This creates an immediate procedural crisis. If Section 3 operates as a rigid kill switch, a single genuine emergency, like a coma, a natural disaster, or a filing error, would result in a permanent miscarriage of justice. To solve this, the remainder of the Limitation Act is constructed as a series of highly specific mechanical breaks designed to alter, pause, or rewind the Section 3 clock under strict conditions. Because Section 3 is so hostile to late claims, relying on exceptions requires flawless navigation of these statutory mechanics. The first method of altering the clock is Section 5, or condonation of delay. Think of this as a manual rewind operated by the judge. But it carries a severe constraint. It applies to appeals and applications, but is forbidden for original civil suits. Invoking Section 5 requires an applicant to demonstrate sufficient cause for missing the deadline. They must prove the delay was beyond their control. The standard for what constitutes sufficient cause was established by the Supreme Court of India in the landmark Collector Land Acquisition v. Katiji case. The court ruled that sufficient cause must be interpreted elastically to achieve substantial justice. They determined that dismissing a meritorious case over technical delays causes more harm than good, extending this grace to even excuse delays caused by a lawyer's negligence. Yet this elasticity highlights a stark procedural divide. While an appellate judge can grant grace for a late filing, a trial judge facing a late original suit remains bound by the absolute bar of Section 3. Section 5 acts as a tool of subjective judicial mercy, but the system permits this flexibility only after a party has successfully initiated their original case. Plaintiffs filing original suits cannot rely on judicial discretion. They must rely on objective statutory pauses, beginning with Section 6, legal disability. The Limitation Act recognizes exactly 3 states of legal disability: minority, insanity, and idiocy. If a plaintiff suffers from one of these 3 conditions, Section 6 pauses the limitation clock, preventing time from running until the disability ceases.
However, this protection is governed by the fatal trap of Section 9, the continuous running of time rule. Section 9 requires precise mathematical alignment. For the clock to pause, the disability must exist at the exact microsecond the cause of action is born. If a plaintiff falls into insanity just 24 hours later, the clock ignores it. No subsequent disability will halt it. This strictness serves a specific policy function. Allowing subsequent disabilities to pause the clock would subject defendants to infinite uncertainty, leaving them vulnerable to lawsuits decades after the evidence has vanished. Even when a plaintiff does secure a Section 6 pause, the Act deploys a final safeguard under Section 8 to prevent an unlimited runway for filing. Section 8 caps the extension. No matter how long a person was disabled, they are granted a maximum of exactly 3 years to file their suit from the date they are cured or reach the age of majority. Legal disability operates as a rigidly controlled, objective delay mechanism built on strict timing and hard mathematical caps. This mathematical rigidity applies just as heavily when a diligent plaintiff accidentally files their suit in the wrong court. Section 14 protects plaintiffs who find themselves trapped in legal proceedings before a court that suffers from a defect of jurisdiction. Unlike Section 5, Section 14 does not ask the judge for forgiveness. It requires the judge to perform a strict mathematical subtraction. Here's how this exclusion of time operates. If a plaintiff wastes months in a court with no authority, Section 14 isolates that wasted period and completely removes it. The timeline snaps together, mathematically extending the final deadline by those exact days. To earn this recalculation, the plaintiff must prove two things. First, they pursued the invalid case with continuous due diligence, and second, they filed there in objective good faith, not as a delaying tactic. Section 14 ensures that bureaucratic friction and complex jurisdictional boundaries do not quietly cannibalize a plaintiff's right to a fair trial. This flowchart reveals the Limitation Act as a procedural algorithm. When a cause of action accrues, it applies a first check. Did a legal disability exist at that microsecond? Next, it assesses jurisdiction, mathematically subtracting time wasted in invalid courts. The final step splits the path. Original suits proceed directly to the deadline. Appeals face a subjective check. Can you prove sufficient cause to invoke judicial grace? Passing competitive exams and succeeding in legal practice requires treating the act exactly like this. It is not a memorized list of dates, but a strict sequence of logical filters. This architecture defines the Limitation Act as a predictable, mechanical system of state power. This brings us back to the ultimate arbiter of these rules, and the final question: why is this system so intentionally inflexible? The answer was starkly delivered by the Supreme Court in the 2013 ruling of Popat by Hiru Govardhane. The court issued a harsh reminder. Judges possess zero inherent power to extend limitation periods based on sympathy, hardship, or equitable grounds. If the statute does not explicitly allow it, the court's hands are tied. This strictness enforces the state's overriding interest republicae ut sit finis litium. It is in the interest of society that there be an end to litigation. Without the Limitation Act permanently sealing old wounds, the legal apparatus would collapse under the weight of decades-old disputes, lost evidence, and generational vendettas. The mechanics of time in the legal system are intentionally unforgiving. Justice delayed indefinitely creates a direct threat to the stability of the law itself.